Hi guys. Start with this do now. You don't need to write this down. Just think about the measuring tools that you know of. All right. So today is TE12 and it's about measuring. And today we're just talking about measuring length and width and stuff like that. You could have said anything that measures volume or weight. All of those would be measuring tools, but today we're talking about length and width. Or height, etc. Okay, so please write this down. This is just notes. So there are two main systems of measurement. One is the metric system, and one is the US customary system. The main difference between these two systems is that the metric system is based on the number 10, and the US customary system is based on having or doubling units. So for example, you've seen things in the metric system, it's like centimeters and meters. You might see something for the metric system like 1.2 centimeters. You can tell it's based on the number 10 because we have a tenths place, you would have a hundredths place, and we use the factor of 10 to cut those numbers into smaller pieces. Whereas the US customary system, this includes like inches and miles, feet, all of that stuff is part of the US customary system. And when we say it's based on having or doubling units, you could say like 1.5 inches, but you're more likely to say something like 1.5 inches, or smaller than that would be a 1/4 inch. Next smaller is an 1/8 inch, a 1/16 of an inch, a 32nd of an inch. So instead of being clear like the metric system and going by tens, it goes into these smaller and smaller fractions when you want to divide it up. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. You don't have to write down too much. I just want to make it clear like the difference and where you would find these things. So the metric system is used basically around the world. Because of its clarity and its use in science, it is used by almost everybody except for us. So we have the metric system, and we do use it actually for science, for medicine, basically those technical fields. In the US, almost always use the metric system. But in a lot of your daily life stuff, we're still using the customary system. You can tell this because we use miles, right? We do like miles per hour instead of kilometers per hour, that kind of stuff. And then there are two other countries that also use this system. So the US uses it, and then also Liberia and Myanmar. So those are the three countries that use our system. Basically, everybody else is using the metric system, which, as you can imagine, is not a great idea that we're not using that also. So we do, in the US, as I was saying, we do use the metric system for sporting events, for the military, medicine, science, all of those kind of things. We use the metric system. And that's great because the metric system is way easier. I don't know who decided that there should be like 5,280 feet in a mile, but that's not a very easy number to remember. On the contrary, when in the metric system, you have 1,000 meters in a kilometer, and it's really easy to remember because all of these things go by tens, hundreds, thousands, as opposed to kind of random numbers like 12 inches in a foot. Okay, cool. So the reason that we care about this is that science uses the metric system, and that's important to remember because we might be, depending on the family that you grew up in, you are probably more used to using the customary system, and in science we want to get in the habit of using the metric system. Okay, now we're going to go into some basic stuff. I think probably most of you know these things already. I'm going to let you make the choice about whether you write them down. I think most of you know what a ruler is. I don't need you to write that down in your notebook, but let's just make sure that we're all on the same page. So a ruler is used for measuring things that are smaller than 12 inches, because that's how long a ruler is. Rulers often have both the metric system and the US customary system on them. We see both centimeters and inches. All right, so the meter or yardstick, those are basically about the same length. A yardstick again, we have this random number. A yard is 3 feet. I don't know why. So a yardstick is 3 feet long, and then a meter stick is 1 meter long, and that's almost the same distance, a meter and a yard, so they're roughly the same length. And just like rulers, sometimes you'll see meter or yardsticks having both the customary system and the metric system. All right, and then the last tool that we use to measure length and distance is the measuring tape. This maybe some people aren't familiar with. This is used, I think of this as being used a lot in construction. My dad was a builder, so he always had these around. And there's a lot of different distances that you could use this for. So it's used in building because you can use it for a very short distance, or you can use it to measure like the width of a whole room or a whole building even. So this is used when you need to measure something longer, or some people, like builders, often use them even for shorter distances. All right, cool. I'm going to break this down just a little bit more. Again, you don't need to be writing this unless there's stuff that you are not familiar with. So I think you guys mostly know about millimeters and centimeters. We've talked about this a little bit. So there are 10 millimeters in, oh, that's incorrect. There are, oh yeah, okay. Sorry, there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter and 10 centimeters in 1 decimeter. You're not really going to hear people talking about decimeter, but it does exist. We usually just think about it in millimeters, centimeters, meters, and then longer distances. For some reason, we usually skip the decimeter. So 10 millimeters in a centimeter, and then centi, that means 100. So there are 100 centimeters in a meter. All right, and then this one with the weird numbers. So the US customary system has 12 inches in a foot, and those inches are broken up into smaller and smaller fractions. So you have an inch, then you have a half inch that's smaller, a quarter inch, an eighth of an inch, a 16th of an inch. You can go a little bit smaller, but it doesn't get much smaller than that because we don't usually use inches for, or the US customary system for like microscopic lengths. You would definitely be using the metric system at that point. Okay, and then just showing this, which I think you guys all know from a ruler. This is just how 1 inch would be shown, then half an inch is obviously half of that. A quarter inch is then half of that, and there are 4 of them in an inch. An eighth, etc., etc. And a 16th. Okay, it had an animation counting out each one. I think you guys can count to 16, you're fine. All right, so just to go over that, there's 2 measurement systems. You do need to talk about the differences between these 2 systems in the homework right after this video. And let's just keep in mind that the metric system is the one that we should always be using in science, even in the US, that is used for science. All right, talk to you guys later.